Millions know Katy Tur for her work with NBC and MSNBC, a frequent target of Donald Trump's, both during his campaign and his presidency. She's proven her journalistic grit over and over again. But now she's opening up about where it all began as the child of two fearless LA journalists who gained national fame for capturing some of the most iconic news moments of our time. From the O.J. Simpson white Bronco chase to the '92 LA riots. It's all laid out in the new memoir, Rough Draft, and trust me, it is rough at times. Katy Tur joins me now ahead of a stop at the great Brookline Booksmith this Thursday night. Katy, welcome and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Before we get to Rough Draft, I assume people know you wrote this wonderful book, an account of the 2016 Trump campaign. You covered him, you interviewed him, you were insulted by him. Little Katy was his obviously demeaning nickname for you. So you have a special vantage point on the first couple of days of these hearings. What do you take away from what you heard?
I think it's remarkable, and the case that they are laying out is so far pretty compelling. It's also just right out of the Trump playbook, what we've seen him do since we've seen him in his political life, which is when he doesn't like something, go out and search for the thing that agrees with his opinion of any event or any scenario. And the committee has done a really, I think, compelling job of laying out that he was told over and over again that the election was fair, that there was not fraud, and he found himself searching for anybody that would tell him otherwise. And according to the testimony, it seems he landed on Rudy Giuliani, who was intoxicated that night. I mean, that alone is a big deal, but then to go on and try to link it as they have to a broader grift, they're going there. They're going there, Jim.
You think Ivanka's out of the will by week's end or a little bit longer?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. But, to see him throw her under the bus in that statement was, I guess it was kind of sad.
Well, I had other emotions, but okay. So most of us think we had helicopter parents. You actually had helicopter parents. I knew of them. I didn't know they were your parents till I read your book. Explain to people who they were, what they did.
My parents started a company called Los Angeles News Service in the 80s in Los Angeles, late 70s actually. And they covered breaking news at first from the ground, and then from an airplane, didn't really work in an airplane, and then from a helicopter. Los Angeles is a big sprawling city, and in order to get to a story while it's still happening, a helicopter is what you need. So they did that, and you probably know them from the slow speed OJ pursuit. Yeah. They were the ones that found OJ. From the Reginald Denny beating and the LA riots, the guy that got pulled out of the red gravel truck and beaten. Or from any police pursuit that you saw in LA in the 80s or 90s, or the Malibu fires. They shot it all.
You know, I love the image you paint of your mother practically hanging out of the helicopter to get the footage. She was the video.
You can see a photo of it over my shoulder right over there. My mom is hanging out of the helicopter.
Is that really true?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's pretty great.
It is true, yeah.
But your father really liked the spotlight, the plaudits. Was he comfortable sharing that with your mother, who was every bit the partner?
Oh, gosh. I think that my mom had she was more of a wallflower, and she was shyer. So for her, for a lot of the time when I've asked her about it, she said that she was comfortable letting him have the spotlight. But there were moments where it was not cool. I mean, she shot the video of the LA riots. She hung out of the helicopter as the guys in the street were shooting at the helicopter with guns. And there was a bullet hole in the battery beneath her seat. And she didn't get the credit for it. I mean, they won an Emmy for that coverage, and her name was taken off of the Emmy to add some guys who were on the assignment desk. And I think that bothered her for a long time. And I tried to correct that record in the book because she did incredible things.
Well, the credit may not have been shared. What was shared, and this is really painful in your book, was violence and abuse directed at her, you, your sibling. Can you fill in some of those blanks for us? What was it like living in the Tur household when you were a kid?
Well, it was a lot, and it had its ups and it had its downs. It was, a helicopter flying in the air and then a helicopter in free fall. It could be a lot of fun. It was certainly interesting. I literally grew up in a helicopter. I was in a helicopter more than I was in my own bed. I saw Los Angeles from a vantage point that nobody else got. We got to have lunch at in Catalina for the day, or in San Francisco. I mean, we did amazing things, and I had a lot of fun. But that fun was often coupled with terror and very scary moments. My dad was really young when I was born. My dad dealt with a lot of abuse from my grandfather, physical abuse and emotional abuse. And the news was really a stressful place. And all of that came out because my dad didn't deal with it in rage and sometimes physical violence. When I was young, he would punch the walls and leave holes in the wall. He would throw batteries at my mother if she didn't do as good of a job as he wanted, or she wasn't listening right. He at times could get physical with my brother and I, but more than that, there was just a lot of yelling and a lot of anger, and it was hard, and I ran away from it.
Yeah, you write that you made a list of the things he would throw at your mother, which really has stayed with me. You also write early in the book, Katy, that until this very moment, I've been avoiding my childhood and everything about it. Why did you stop? I'm a guy who doesn't like telling people what I had for lunch. You are so transparent and raw in this thing. Why did you decide to stop avoiding it?
Because it's a hell of a story. It really is a hell of a story. My parents did incredible things, and it made me who I am today. I'm a journalist. I've had some wild experiences covering the news, from plane crashes to political campaigns. And I was often asked, why didn't you quit when you covered Donald Trump? I mean, he directed the crowds at you. You got death threats. Why did you keep doing it? And I in trying to figure out why, I had to look back, and it's partially because of the way my parents were journalists. So, I mean, why did I do it now? It's a hell of a story. I want my kids to know it. And in order to tell the story, I've got to tell it in full. And that means you're going to get the good with the bad.
And relive the pain. There's a little bit more than a little bit of Trump in your father. Is that not a fair statement?
Listen, they're not the same person. They don't have the same views. But I write in the book, this is my clever one-liner, if they were looking for a therapist, I'd recommend the same one.
I was hoping I would get that one-liner. Thank you for that. Katy, 9 years, by the way, I'm doing this interview from the Boston Public Library, which is about 100 yards, as you know, from the finish line of the Boston Marathon. You're covering the bombing 9 years ago, and you get a call from your father. What does he tell you?
So my dad calls me. I'm there, and we had at this point a very tense relationship because of all that had happened in the past. And I'm saying I'm very careful with pronouns here. You're going to have to give me a little space. He calls and he says, "I'm not a he. I'm not Bob Tur. Bob Tur is dead. I'm Zoe Tur, or first it was Hannah, and I'm a woman, and this is my true self, and this is why I've been so angry. And everything is going to get a lot better now." And, in the moment, it threw me for a loop, and I didn't really feel like I had the vocabulary for it. And I'll be honest, in the moment, I didn't know how to switch the pronouns immediately, because I had lived for 30 years with somebody who identified as one person, and now this was changing. And it precipitated not the transition, but the confrontation that we had in trying to confront what Bob Tur did precipitated an even bigger break. And, it was not great. And it still isn't great.
I saw him on, I think it was the CBS Morning News, where I saw you interviewed the other day, that he loved you, and that and I'm paraphrasing, he hoped for a rapprochement. How did you react to what she had to say, your father had to say in that interview?
Well, it's always, any child will tell you that it's great to hear a parent say they love you. And I love hearing that. I didn't do this to be vindicated. I didn't do it to settle a score or to embarrass anybody. I just did it to tell the truth and to be authentic. And I'm always hopeful that things will get better. I'm hopeful for the future. I want my dad to be happy.
When you said you're hopeful for the future, I know you meant that in a personal way, but I just remembered you also wrote in either the introduction to your book or early on, you were afraid for the future of our country. Why are you afraid?
I am very afraid. And when I say I'm hopeful for the future, I've got to temper that for our future. I'm afraid because we can't seem to agree on the basics. We had a deadly pandemic and we couldn't agree on life or death issues. We can't agree, it feels like, on whether the sky is blue. And that's scary to me because you are now able to go wherever you want to hear whatever you want to hear. You don't have to tune into a nightly broadcast at 6:30 to find out what's going on in the country or the world. You can go to Facebook, or you can go to Twitter, or you can go to whatever news outlet you might go to. And because of that, you are hearing decidedly different versions of the same event. And some of them are just completely untrue versions of the same event. That scares me. I don't know how we get back to a place where we have a shared set of facts. And I'm hopeful that there is a larger part of the population that's out there that is going to say enough and be more vocal and active in politics so that we can get things back on track.
And when you watch that, when I was watching the hearings, we broadcast them here, and I watched every minute. What I was thinking about every minute with half my brain was what was being said, and trying to imagine with the other half of my brain, who is the person out there who until last Thursday night was a Trumpophile who is finally saying, aha, I just can't do this anymore. Can you identify that person in your mind?
I don't know. And I think it's hard. I don't want to make a person's mind up for them. I think you should look more toward the person who has been disaffected with politics and looks at that and says, hey, listen, this is not okay. I've got to get involved. The lie has become so entrenched with people who love Donald Trump, so entrenched, and it gets reinforced by the people around Trump, by Trump himself, by certain cable news hosts, and by other politicians who are trying to draft off the president. And because it's so emphasized and so amplified, I think it's hard to break free of it.
Katy, before you go, when I met you a couple of minutes ago, I said both of your books were terrific, and they both could have been called unbelievable because Rough Draft is unbelievable but true. What do you hope people take away from this the second memoir of yours?
I hope they're entertained. Honestly, I hope they're entertained, and I hope in the darker parts of it, because there's a lot of fun stuff, but I hope in the darker parts of it, I hope some people feel like they're being seen. I've heard from a lot of people since this book came out, or since it's only been a day, but I've heard from a lot of people who have read parts of it who've said, I went through something similar, and thank you, because I've always been scared to talk about it. I didn't expect that. I really did not expect that. And I'm so happy that it's landing that way. And also, I think it's a good way to think about the media and our landscape and how we got to where we are right now. There's some fun media analysis and some revelations or some reminders about Walter Cronkite in there as well. A tease.
I hope we get to talk about the media someday soon. Katy, really enjoyed the book and really enjoyed the time. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
Be well.